Hi all, welcome to another interview here on Blockonomics. I'm really excited to be here today with Hermann, calling in from South Africa, and
Mhm.
he's here to talk about his Bitcoin projects, his Surfing Kids projects. I'm really excited about that. We chatted a bit before we started recording. I think it's going to be a really interesting interview. So thank you for joining me, Hermann. And I guess I'd like to start with an elevator pitch. Like tell us about what you're working on right now.
Cool, man. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you reaching out. Yeah, basically, I think this interview came about because of the Bitcoin project that we launched a couple of months ago. So we haven't really done anything groundbreaking here. We've basically copied the Bitcoin Beach model, and we've tried to implement it in a South African setting. So I've been following Bitcoin Beach since mid 2019. I heard an interview with Michael Peterson, and it just really spoke to me. I thought it was a really cool way to illustrate the use case of Bitcoin in a real sense. I've been fascinated and, to be honest, obsessed with Bitcoin for a long time, and I think if Bitcoin is gonna reach its potential, it's gonna have to be used on a daily basis rather than just held on to. Um, so yeah, we're trying to do pretty much what Bitcoin Beach has done. Obviously, there are differences. It's a different setting. It's a different country, and it's still very new. We've only been going for 5 months. We launched sort of towards the end of last year, so it's still very small scale, and we are taking it slow. We don't want to rush into things and make mistakes that could have been avoided.
Um, yeah, I certainly agree with you that people need to use Bitcoin more often. Like that's what we want to do too. Like get people using it daily. Um, I guess kind of for people who haven't followed Bitcoin Beach before, like I believe it's in El Salvador.
Yeah.
Um, and but maybe explain more like basic about that concept in case anybody hasn't heard about Bitcoin Beach yet.
Okay, so Bitcoin Beach, just to put it in a nutshell, is a project that's run by a community of people, but initially started by an American expat by the name of Michael Peterson. He'd been living down in El Salvador and El Zonte for I think he's been there for 17 years, so back and forth between the States and El Salvador. And he was approached by an anonymous donor who wanted to donate some Bitcoin, on the condition that it's used as Bitcoin and not converted back to fiat. I believe that this person, whoever they are, actually approached several other NPOs, non-profits, before they got to Michael, and they were turned down. So Michael Peterson but basically said, well, they'll give it a shot, and they came up with this idea of how to implement it, and they onboarded shops to accept Bitcoin, and they started paying some kids to do small local jobs and paid them in Bitcoin, and these kids would spend the Bitcoin at the shops, and it sort of just snowballed from there. That's pretty much the way I understand it.
Cool, great. And so for your project then, and I'm going to unfortunately butcher the name, Ekasi, like it's Bitcoin Ekasi, right?
Yeah.
Ekasi? Okay. Um,
Yeah.
and I was looking up, I think you tweeted a few days ago about the history of that word, and I loved the little video that you had with the music and so on. But I thought it was interesting with its attachment to the Afrikaner word, and I don't have the original Afrikaner word in front of me, but the slums and so on, and I'm curious about looking at your project in terms of like we're kind of going straight into the heart of it here, combating racism, smashing through post-colonial like issues, like how do you view that, in taking that stance and trying to build this economy?
Well, I have to just say that I mean, I actually gave the option to our coaches, and so I don't actually run the program on a daily basis. I do the
Sure.
management, and I try to work behind the scenes as far as possible. But we have one senior coach and three junior coaches who run the program in the township, and they are from the same community where we recruit the children.
Hmm.
And so they are the face of the organization in the township itself. And I gave them the option of what should we call this project. Obviously it had to have the word Bitcoin in it, but what do we put behind it? And yeah, and they were happy with the suggestion to call it Bitcoin Ekasi. It's one of those words, as I understand it. It obviously originally it was an Afrikaans word, and Afrikaans is my mother language, but Afrikaans is also the language of the oppressors during apartheid. The apartheid government was very much Afrikaans, so it is the language of the oppressors. So it is strange that an Afrikaans word would make its way into colloquial African languages as a slang term. And actually, Ekasi is seen as a very positive word in those terms. It's sort of, Ekasi refers to a township, but also sort of towards the vibe of the township. So if you're driving into a township, there's always people partying in the street. There's chickens walking all over the place. There's people cooking fire on the side, cooking meat over the fire on the sidewalks. People don't live in their houses in the township because the houses aren't houses, they're shacks, and they're so small. So they tend to live out on the street. And Ekasi kind of refers to that vibey aspect, which is why I posted that video with the music and the guy dancing. It kind of, so it comes from the language of the oppressors, but it's been appropriated and turned into something positive by the people who use it.
And so then do you see your project as trying to kind of, like, just as the word has almost been taken back, reappropriated by those who had been oppressed, do you see this project as trying to do the same thing, like take Bitcoin and allow people who had been oppressed historically to be able to push forward, break through that glass ceiling?
Yeah, I mean, I think look, it's important to understand that what we're doing is similar to what happened in El Salvador with Bitcoin Beach. Our project, this Bitcoin Ekasi project, is based off of an existing nonprofit organization which has been going for more than a decade. And so, as far as the aims and the mission of the Bitcoin project are very much aligned with the underlying organization, and the underlying organization is called the Surfer Kids. And yeah, that's very much been about breaking down some of these preconceived barriers. One of the very common preconceptions is that people from poorer neighborhoods, Black African people, are not interested in the ocean, and this is something that white Afrikaans people, and well, not just Afrikaans people, but racists have always maintained that Africans don't really belong in the ocean, and surfing obviously happens in the ocean. And so it's one of those things that sort of reaches out across one of these barriers and just obviously disproves it as absolute nonsense. So with the Bitcoin project, I mean, yeah, it very much aligns with that. Yeah, I mean, we're basically trying to build up a community using Bitcoin as a tool.
That's a wonderful mission. I'd love to get more into the Surfer Kids in a little bit, but sticking with the building community with the Bitcoin, I'm curious about like the technical aspects. That was kind of what we were how we got in touch with each other with your tweets, your series of tweets about setting it up. I'm like I'm curious if you can expand on that, like how are shopkeepers using Bitcoin, things like that.
Well, basically we would pay our coaches in Bitcoin into a wallet. We use either Moon Wallet or Blue Wallet, and they would then spend that Bitcoin at a shop, which has all of this happens on the Lightning Network, simply because we're dealing with really small transactions, things that are, they tend to buy, the coaches tend to buy things that are generally less than $1 or $2 per purchase, maybe even less than that. So a bread is about a third of $1, kind of thing. So it's really small amounts. So we're using Blue Wallet, which is a custodial Lightning wallet, and then we're using Moon Wallet, which is sort of semi-custodial, but not entirely. The merchants are using a custodial Lightning wallet called Lightning Tipbot. The only reason we do that is because they're one of the few wallets that at the moment do LN URL pay QR codes, because what we found was that one of the slightly not slightly inconvenient, one of the very inconvenient things with Lightning is issuing invoices. So with on-chain transactions, it's a lot easier because you can simply display your Bitcoin address either as an address or a QR code, and people can just pay to it, which makes on-chain a lot easier in that sense. And with Lightning, that's a lot more complicated, as I understand it. So a lot of wallets don't have that integrated yet. Lightning Tipbot is one of the few wallets that do. And then, they would spend at the merchants, and the merchants would, some of it they would sell through platforms like Paxful. They also use Bitrefill to buy airtime and vouchers for local groceries and at supermarkets. But most of the Bitcoin are actually held by the merchants. Once they've satisfied themselves that this is real money and not just some weird internet stuff, then they actually tend to hold on to it. And for doing that, they would transfer it from Lightning back to an on-chain wallet for safekeeping over the longer term, because obviously you don't want to keep things in Lightning unless it's small amounts, especially if it's custodial. You don't want to, it's sort of like pocket change, but nothing more than that. And then donations come in through the website. Most of the larger amounts come in on chain, which is what we use Blockonomics for. And some of it come in through Lightning, which again goes to an LN textbot, Lightning Tipbot enabled wallet. So it's a bit of a mix and a match of things. But I think the cool thing is that everything we've used has been sort of, we don't have any developers on our team, so we've had to make this work without having development skills. And so everything we've used is basically, straight off the App Store kind of thing. It's nothing has been customized or anything. So we've actually been using Blockonomics for a very long time. We've been on the Blockonomics platform for years before we even start this Bitcoin project. I've been trying to encourage Bitcoin donations through the website for a long time, but it's never really taken off until we now launched Bitcoin Ekasi, and those donations come through the Shopkeeps website using the Blockonomics platform. So it's been a I was very happy to find that it's one of the, I like the Bitcoin ethos is obviously about self-custody, and I try and encourage that as well as far as possible. Sometimes it's just not possible. Sometimes, if you have to go to the custodial route, but I was pleasantly surprised when I found Blockonomics, because it allows that self-custody model, but it makes it easy, if that makes sense.
Yeah. no, that does make sense. Um, yeah, it does sound like a hodgepodge of technical, but hey, it works, and I guess that's the important thing. It seems to be working well. I would like to return to Blockonomics in a little bit, and especially once I talk about Surfer Kids. But one more question that I was thinking about with the Bitcoin economy and like, so the merchants, just so that I kind of understand what's going on. So the merchants will they also then, do you see them going out and using Bitcoin at the other merchant stores, or right now is it still mainly the managers that are driving this?
No, at the moment, the only thing that's happening is that we're paying our coaches in Bitcoin and they would spend at the stores.
Got it.
The stores haven't started trading with Bitcoin between them, and they haven't actually gone out and bought stock with Bitcoin, so to speak. The only thing they've done with their Bitcoin really is they've sold a little bit of it, and they've used it. I think Bitrefill has been very convenient, because you can actually buy airtime, data for the phone and stuff like that without actually leaving you don't have to leave your shop.
Right.
But most of it is they see it as a sort of an investment.
Okay.
It's quite hard for us to know exactly what they're doing with the Bitcoin, because at the end of the day, it's their money and we can't ask them, for too much detail.
Sure.
But from what we can tell, they're still holding on to most of it.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Cool. Well, then going back, I guess, towards the towards Surfer Kids, and then eventually moving in to the Blockonomics donation button link again. So Surfer Kids, I was looking you up, and you seem to really enjoy surfing, and I guess that makes sense because you ended up making Surfer Kids, and there was another surfing organization that now I can't remember the name of, unfortunately. So yeah, I don't know. To start off with, what draws you to surfing?
Well, me personally, I grew up surfing.
Okay.
So it's just something that I've done my entire life. My parents moved to the coast when I was 5, and I ended up in the ocean because if you're a kid and you live near the beach, then then that's what you do. I grew up surfing from a very young age, and when the long story in a short version is that when my wife and I married, we started a business which was centered around the tourism industry and surfing and doing surf trips for overseas clients, and at the same time we sort of started looking for things to do in the local community, and we started just taking these kids out on little surf sessions. We didn't really know what we were doing, but then that process sort of like evolved, and it ended up growing into a sort of a separate organization. And I guess it kept going because surfing's got such a steep learning curve that it's easy to engage somebody right off the bat because it's so much fun, and you're in the ocean, and you're at the beach, and you're riding waves, and it's a lot of fun, and it's easy to get started. So you get hooked very quickly, but then once you're hooked, the learning curve becomes really steep very quickly. So to actually learn anything, it takes a hell of a lot of commitment. So what we found with the kids was that they tend to, the ones that stick around tend to stick around for good.
Yeah.
So it sort of encourages this idea of commitment, and coming back to the South African setting, there's a hell of a lot of inequality here, and it kind of like speaks to this idea that I want to try and help people as far as I can. Obviously, I think most people want to help their fellow human beings, but then at some point I just realized that the only way of helping somebody is really to try and help them to help themselves. because otherwise you become a crutch for them. And when you step away, they end up being worse off than when you got to them in the first place. So if you're going to help somebody, you've got to try and get them to be able to help themselves. And so surfing teaches this idea that if you really want something, whatever it is that you want, if you're willing to commit to it, then eventually you'll get it in one way or another. And so we try and teach the kids this at a very early age. And surfing is just sort of like a medium through which we try and impart this understanding to them. It's just a tool, really.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And so I guess then moving back into the Blockonomics side of things, yeah, you mentioned that you use the donation button for on-chain, that it was a relatively easy setup, has and after the Bitcoin Ekasi has started taking off, and then outsiders see it, want to donate. How has that donation button process been for you? Like it's worked well?
It's worked really well. I mean, it's almost too easy to set up. I haven't actually. I know there's a way of getting it integrated into the website so that people can actually use it without leaving the site.
Yeah.
So my development skills is on that level that I haven't even been able to do that. It took me. I first encountered Bitcoin in sort of mid 2013, and when I tell people that, they're like, "Wow, that's a long time." I'm like, "Yeah, that's how much time I needed to get my head around it."
Yeah.
So
what I always joke is that, like, you never, if anybody tells you that they're a Bitcoin expert, they either don't know what they're talking about or they're lying to you. That, like, I've been in here since 2017 and I don't know much about it either. So
yeah, exactly. No, if somebody says they're a Bitcoin expert, you must turn and run.
Yeah.
But I'm not super technical. I can figure things out, and I'm willing to give it a go. I love using Ubuntu, which is a version of Linux, and that normally involves being ready to give things a go, because they don't always work the way they're supposed to. But I'm not super technical. I come from a sort of a philosophical background, which is what I studied at university, and I'm more interested in the human nature, behavioral part of this, because Bitcoin obviously, with its incentive structure, speaks to human nature and our behavior in a very deep and meaningful way. So that's sort of the angle I come at it from. So the technical side of things, it's not my strongest side, but despite that, it's been so easy to set up the Blockonomics account and have people donate through that, and still it lets you sort of, it obviously lets you send payments straight to your own self-custody wallet, which is the way it should be. I mean, I'm one of those people that, like, I understand that not everybody is super technical, because I'm not super technical, but I think if you're dealing with on-chain Bitcoin, everybody should self-custody.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. There's no reason why today, with the wallets that we have available today, there's no reason why everybody, even my grandmother, should self-custody with. I mean, if you can use WhatsApp, you can self-custody your Bitcoin, really.
Yeah.
When it comes to Lightning, because it's so super technical, it's kind of it's tricky. Self-custodying and managing your channels and doing that, that's a different. I mean, I love the functionality, and I love the transactions being fast and cheap, but I'm not sure that Lightning is going to go the full self-custody route. I think to a large extent that's going to remain custodial for most people. Whereas I think with on-chain, really everybody should self-custody. And that's what's so great about Blockonomics, is that it's easy, but it's still, it lets you self-custody. And I was really, I mean, when I saw that you guys have this thing where you sort of rely on this honesty system, where, I was like, man, that's awesome, because you let somebody build up credits, and then you trust that they're gonna make good on that. And I was like, okay, well, that kind of seems to line up with what Bitcoin's all about. Because I think a lot of people make a big deal about early adopters getting rich off of Bitcoin, but it's not about that at all. I think Bitcoin is all about development and community upliftment and making the world a better place, really. I think that was the original vision of Satoshi, was to improve the world. I don't think Satoshi created Bitcoin to become wealthy. I don't think that was his primary objective. So
I think too many Bitcoiners and non-Bitcoiners and crypto users and so on, that they do kind of ignore that philosophical and community and even political aspects of it, that we are all, I agree with you. I think, and our mission kind of goes along with that, it really is about building a community, building, like a system that helps people, that makes it easier for people. And I think that self-custodial is the way forward, at least for on-chain. It's interesting about the Lightning thing, and you're thinking that it won't be self-custodial necessarily because of its more complexity. It's an interesting thought. And we might have to help you set up the in the browser link. I'll talk to you about that afterwards. We'll see what we can do for you.
No, definitely. I gave it a shot, and then I haven't tried again. The last time I tried was a while back. But our website is built through this drag and drop thing, Wix. Wix isn't great for that. I should really move on to something else.
We are working, because actually another South African who uses us, she does artwork, like Bitcoin artwork and so on. She's based out of Cape Town, but she uses Wix, and so like that kind of gave us the idea, because like she sells a lot of her artwork on Wix and uses us to process her artwork, and we wanted to figure out well, what's an easier way, like that made us thinking, like Wix, we've got to have a better way for Wix. So with that in the page, we hopefully are coming out something new with Wix soon, with being able to fix the coding so that it'll work with Wix. So we'll see.
No, I mean, I'm honestly so it gives me so much hope to see the kind of development that's happening in Bitcoin and how much has been done, because it's incredible to think that it's come so far. I mean, obviously a lot of the development has been done by companies who do it for profit, but at the end of the day, I think Bitcoin itself is sort of this open source community driven thing, and there's been so much development that's happened, and people have come so far. I mean, to go from the original client, because when I first, my first Bitcoin wallet was a QT, a Bitcoin Core QT wallet, and when I got my first, when I received my first transaction, I had to wait for the entire blockchain. This guy told me, look, I'm going to sell you a Bitcoin, and then but you got to download this thing first. And I was like, what do you mean I've got to download this thing first? And he says, well, it's this thing called the blockchain, and you just got to wait for it to synchronize, otherwise you're not going to see the thing that you bought from me. I was like, what are you talking about? And it took me like a week and a half. It took me like a week and a half to download the blockchain. There was this clunky wallet, and I was like, gee, goodness, this thing is pretty clumsy. And to see how far it's come from then until now, it's insane.
Yeah. It's, I mean, even even just being in it since 2017, from my point of view, that's when I got into Bitcoin. It's expanded a lot since then too, and I think it is really great. And it's a wonderful sandbox, to where people can explore their ideas and develop new stuff. And
No,
yeah,
for sure.
it's really cool. It's really cool. So what's next for you? What do you envision next? What do you hope to see Bitcoin Ekasi do in the future?
Well, our plan is to just keep going and to sort of hopefully we want this thing to grow organically if it's gonna go, and we don't have any plans. We're gonna stick to the township where we're based at the moment.
Sure.
Because that's where we recruit the kids from. That's where our program is based. That's where the coaches live. That's where we have the community support and the community trust. And so I don't think we'll expand beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to focus on that community. We've only got 3 shops on board. There's a total of 14 shops in the township. So there's a long way for us to go before we've got all of them on board. And so we'll focus on getting as many of those shops on board. I think we'll also, we'd like to, again, emulate what Bitcoin Beach has done by opening a sort of a educational center in the township itself. Because at the moment we're operating from our headquarters at the beach, which is very close. The kids walk up and down on a daily basis. I mean, the program for the kids, the surfing program runs 5 days a week, and so they walk up and down. It's like a 10-minute walk, but it's not in the township community itself. And so we can never expect people from the community to walk down to our current headquarters to find out about Bitcoin and learn more about it. We're going to have to open something in the township itself. And I think once we do that, then we can reach out to the wider community and not just the shop owners, and start educating the surrounding community about Bitcoin and get them on board too, so that they can start buying Bitcoin from the shops and then spending it at a different shop. And this is sort of how things developed in Bitcoin Beach as well. Initially they also simply paid coaches who spent at the vendors, and then the next step was for the vendors to then spend that somewhere else, and then that goes somewhere else, and then so at the moment what we're doing, it's not circular yet, and we want to try and make it circular. So we would basically to put it shortly, we'd like to just expand into the community, but we don't have any plans to go wider than that. And I'm not expecting it to happen overnight or quickly. It's going to take some time. The people are naturally suspicious, and for good reason. You can't expect anything else.
Yeah. What if somebody wanted to emulate you or emulate Bitcoin Beach? What is something that maybe you wish you'd done better in the initial stages, or you think about it now and you're like, oh man, I should have done this? If somebody wanted to emulate you in Bitcoin Beach, what would you tell them? You got to do this.
Well, first of all, I would tell them to try and emulate Bitcoin Beach, not what we're doing.
Okay.
I would say try and emulate what Bitcoin Beach did, and wait for us to prove that what we're doing actually works before you try and copy what we're doing. But I think to answer your question, what do I hope we could have done differently was, I don't know. I think maybe it would have been great to maybe have a better grasp on the technical aspect of things before launching this, because I've embarrassed myself once or twice. I mean, look, I'm not embarrassed personally, but I kind of think that, I mean, I kind of think it would have been more responsible to have a better grasp on the technical side of things. I personally don't, but maybe I could have gotten a developer on board somehow, and obviously there are people who have reached out, but the thing is, like, it just feels like I need somebody who's here. And then maybe eventually people can help remotely, but just to get that initial setup going. But then again, I'm not, that doesn't concern me too much, because I kind of knew that that was a shortcoming we had going into this. So, which is why the only way I could think of sort of countering that shortcoming was to just take it really slowly, and to stick to really small amounts. So we've only spent, all in all, our coaches have spent less than, just convert that back to dollars, less than $100 over the course of the last 5 months, between 3 shops.
Sure.
So it's really we've tried to stick to small amounts, so that if we make mistakes, it's not like a life-ending amount of money that you're gambling with. But it would have been good to have somebody on the team, in physically present, to have a better grasp on the, and maybe the other thing would have been to maybe just manage expectations a bit better. I think it's been great to see the response from the Bitcoin community. But I think there's a massive appetite for this sort of thing, and I understand it, because that's why I started it, because I want to see something like this happen. Because I want to prove that it's possible to showcase that, look, Bitcoin can deliver on its promise. Because I don't think Bitcoin is going to deliver on its promise if it remains a store of value and a speculative asset. I think for it to deliver on its promise, it has to become what Satoshi envisioned it to be, which is a currency for everyday use. So I want to see this happen for that reason, and I think the wider Bitcoin community wants to see this happen for that reason. And because of that, I think the response has been overwhelming to a large extent, and maybe the response does not match what we've achieved so far. So I would have liked to maybe manage expectations a bit better, but then it's hard to do that. Social media. I know I did not expect to get 20,000 views on the first video we posted on Twitter. It was just it blew me away, and I was like, whoa, what's this? So it's been great, but yeah, I think that's why I keep emphasizing that, we're taking things slow, because I want to just slow. I just want to make that very clear. People mustn't expect that we're going to orange pill the South African president later
overnight,
this year.
Overnight, South Africa entirely operates on Bitcoin, and it's all thanks to you.
No. Very unlikely. Highly unlikely. So yeah.
No, I think that's the Bitcoin community can get very excitable. So I can certainly understand that. And I'm also curious. So I was looking through the Twitter, and I saw that someone from the Bitcoin community, a Bitcoin tourist, shall we say, had stopped by earlier in January. Do you hope to see more of that? Like, is that a positive thing? Is that a negative thing? Like having,
No, absolutely. I would love to see more of that. I think, and this goes back to your initial question right at the beginning about bridging divides. I think one of the main reasons that there are several reasons why we started the Surfer Kids way back when in 2010, but one of the reasons was when we started this tourist company, taking tourists through South Africa. My wife and I, we kind of thought about it, and we were like, there's not many places. I've been to quite a few countries. I lived in Europe for a long time. I traveled through the East for a bit. I've been all over South America, and I was like, there's not many places in the world where I've seen the level of inequality that we have in South Africa. And maybe the one place where I witnessed a similar level of inequality was in India. But the difference between South Africa and India is that the inequality is in your face. So the sort of the marginalized and the poor, impoverished masses are all over the place, and you can't avoid it. You can't help but see it. Whereas in South Africa, because of our history, it's hidden away behind high walls, and it's hidden away between highways that cut through the countryside and put the poor masses on that side of the hill, where nobody really goes unless you make a special effort to do that. And so it's very easy as a tourist. And South Africa is a beautiful tourist destination, and tourism was one of the few sectors prior to the pandemic. Tourism was one of the few sectors that was showing really good positive growth in an economic sense. But it's very easy to come to South Africa as a tourist and think that, like there's a sort of a 50-50 split between black and white, which is very far from reality. In fact, only 10% of the country is white and 90% of the country is black. But you don't see that because most of the poor masses are 99.9% black, and they are hidden behind high walls and on the wrong side of the highway. And so with this NPO, which was initially very closely linked to our tourism business, we wanted to give people a more authentic experience of South Africa and show them that, hey, look, these are some of the areas that you wouldn't normally visit, but it's part of the country, and this is the country that you're visiting. And so with the Bitcoin project, I think that can, because Bitcoiners are a little bit more adventurous than your average tourist. I mean, this guy that visited us had no problem going up into the township, and he was like super enthusiastic about it. And whereas with a lot of other tourists, we generally felt that they would prefer to stick to the white sandy beaches and the shopping malls, but they're not really interested in seeing what's on the other side of the hill or the wrong side of the highway. Whereas with Bitcoin, I feel that Bitcoin cuts through that, and I would love to see people visit the project, not just for the Bitcoin side of things, but because I mean, for the community as well, when they saw this, I mean, it was an American who, his name was John, an American that visited, and they loved it. It's like, hey, there's somebody who's interested in the place where we live, and he's not here to come look at us like we're circus animals. He's actually here to come and spend some Bitcoin at one of our shops. So it's, and maybe even to get local South Africans to do the same thing. That would be first prize, not overseas tourists, but local tourists. Through Bitcoin, to get them to say, hey guys, come and spend some Bitcoin in the township here, just because it's cool. that would be first prize, I think.
That's great. Yeah. Well, I will certainly, because it's Muscle Beach is the township. Yeah.
Muscle Bay.
Muscle Bay.
Yeah.
I will have to put that on my list for the next time that I visit South Africa. And as I've been to South Africa once a few years ago, and I certainly felt that, because my parents and I went to Stellenbosch. First off, that's obviously very, very white, very rich, so on and so forth. But then we took the not the blue train, but the regular train from Cape Town to Johannesburg, and we ended up stuck overnight in Beaufort West. And I thought that is the reaction that most South Africans have when I tell them that. But it was so fascinating to see just, like a different, very different from Stellenbosch. And I thought, very rural, very, people who don't know anything about it, it's very rural. It's very, like it's in the middle of the desert, and it's just a totally different side of South Africa, and very interesting, very important to see, and things like that, so yeah.
That's a very intrepid thing to do. I think the majority of people who visit South Africa don't take the train from Cape Town to Joburg. That's a very adventurous thing to do. But I mean, that's the thing,
Yeah. it was a lot of fun. And, like I would absolutely go back and do it. And I want to take the train the other way this time from Johannesburg to Cape Town.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think that more people should. So I applaud you for your efforts, and I hope that that more tourists will come down. As I said, I'll put it on my list. Next time in South
Yeah.
Africa, I'll try to swing by.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful part of the country, but that there is that divide. I mean, with the history of people being segregated according to what area they may and may not live, and it's still, I mean, that it's been almost a generation. The first people who were born post apartheid are now, they'll be turning 30 years old soon.
Yeah.
But still, the hangover is very real.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and that divide still exists. So if we can do something about that as well, then that'd be fantastic.
That's great. Yeah. Got to smash through that post-colonialism.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. I think that's one of the things that when I was explaining Bitcoin to our senior coach Lutando, because he's the first one that I approached with this idea to run it past him and say, look, what do you think about this? Would you be cool? And he'd never heard about Bitcoin, had no idea what it was, and so I went through the sort of, the normal sort of rigmarole and like, okay, this is what it is. This is what you do. And I think the one thing that really caught his attention was when I explained to him that, look, this is a system that is global all around the world, but it doesn't matter where in the world you are, the rules are the same. It's not this, because this is the one thing that still sticks. This colonialism is dead, but its effects it's still felt very much within the country and between different countries. And that's the thing about Bitcoin. It's sort of it levels that playing field, and that's the one thing that he really latched onto, which he was like, okay, we have to do this. We really have to do this. So yeah.
Well, it's a wonderful program, both Bitcoin Ekasi and the Surfer Kids. We're nearing the end of our time, so I guess, is there anything else that you would like to add that you want that I haven't asked about?
No, I think you pretty much, I think we covered it. I mean, the story's pretty simple.
Yeah.
It's not a complicated thing. And yeah, hopefully we can make it happen. That's all I can say.
Well, I'm certainly sending you good vibes, and I'm happy that with the project, and I really hope that it works out too. So to all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in. To all of our viewers, thank you for tuning in. Make sure to check out Bitcoin Ekasi on Twitter. Make sure to check out the surferkids.com. And you can make that donation in Bitcoin using Blockonomics.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you all, and thank you, Hermann.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.